Welcome back, my fellow thrill seekers. Get comfortable, turn off the extra lights, and prepare to leave the familiar world behind for a little while, because tonight the darkness feels a little deeper, the silence a little more unsettling, and the world you thought you knew just a little less safe. So sit back, relax, and let's step into the shadows. Tonight, you'll hear a chilling ghost story about an old chef who was supposed to be dead, a haunted restaurant, a basement no one wanted to enter, and the terrifying reason some people believed he never stopped working after death. So dim the lights, put on your headphones, and prepare to hear the kind of story that some people would do anything to forget. Now, let's begin. I used to work at a restaurant just outside New Orleans, in a town small enough that everyone knew everyone's business, and big enough that nobody ever admitted what scared them. The place was called Marrow House. If you saw it during the day, you'd probably think it was beautiful. It sat off a two-lane road behind a row of old live oaks in a converted 1920s mansion with white columns, cracked brick steps, and iron railings that looked original. At night, with the exterior lights glowing warm against the trees, it looked like the kind of place people proposed in front of. Anniversary dinners, expensive wine, soft jazz floating out over the parking lot. Inside, it was all dark wood, candlelight, old framed black and white photographs, and that polished southern elegance that made people lower their voices without realizing it. And then there was the basement. I know every ghost story says that. There's always a basement, always a locked room, always a place somebody tells you not to go. This wasn't like that. Nobody told me not to go down there. That would have been easier. I started at Marrow House when I was 24. I'd been waiting tables before that, bouncing between places that looked cool online and turned out to be total disasters in real life. Marrow House was supposed to be different, better money, better clientele, real kitchen, real chef, real future. The owner, Diane, hired me on a Thursday. She was in her 50s, sharp as broken glass, always perfectly dressed, always smiling in a way that didn't tell you anything. "You ever worked fine dining?" she asked. "Kind of," I said. She smiled. "That means no." "Probably no." She laughed once through her nose, glanced at my resume and said, "Can you keep your head when people get loud?" "Usually." "Can you work late?" "Yes." "Can you follow instructions exactly?" I said yes, and she hired me on the spot. My first shift was the next evening. That's when I met Luis, one of the line cooks, and Tasha, the bartender, and Ben, who managed front of house and looked like he'd been born tired. They were normal, funny, stressed, overworked. The usual restaurant people. Fast hands, dark humor, nicotine somewhere in the bloodstream, whether they smoked or not. The head chef, technically, was a guy named Aaron. Early 30s, talented, intense, one of those men who treated every plate like it was going before a firing squad. But on my very first night, I heard another name, Ray. Not like somebody who still worked there, more like an old bruise people pressed without thinking. Around 11, after the dinner rush, I went into the kitchen to ask if Table 12's pork chop could be done medium instead of medium well. Aaron didn't even look up. "Tell them no," Louis snorted. "What?" I said. Aaron wiped his knife and finally looked at me. "Tell them chef says no." Before I could turn away, I heard Tasha at the service window say, "Yeah, because if you ruin pork in this kitchen, Ray comes back." A couple cooks laughed. I smiled because I assumed that was the joke. "Who's Ray?" I asked. Nobody answered right away. Then Louis said, "Old chef." "Like previous chef?" "Like original chef," he said. "Back when this place was still trying to become famous." Aaron rolled his eyes. Jesus Christ, don't start. But Luis was grinning now, leaning back against the prep table. He died here. Tasha, carrying a tray of empty coupes, said, "In the basement." I waited for the punchline. It didn't come. Aaron pointed his knife at all of us. Everybody has exactly enough time for one stupid ghost story a year, and you're using it up in April. Back to work. That should have been the end of it. But once a place gets under your skin, it doesn't need much. Over the next few weeks, I learned the rhythm of Marrow House. Thursdays were rich older couples and business dinners. Fridays were packed and loud. Saturdays were chaos in expensive shoes. Sundays were that weird quiet after a storm. And every night, sometime after 10, somebody had to go down to the basement. That was where dry storage was. Extra wine, bulk flour, sugar, rice, canned tomatoes, old shelves, backup plates, cleaning chemicals. There was also an old walk-in cooler from before the kitchen had been renovated, but it was mostly used for overflow and specialty items. The basement stairs were behind a narrow door near dish pit. Steep wooden steps, low ceiling, bad light. Not creepy in a movie way, creepy in a practical way. Like if you slipped, nobody would hear you for a minute. The first time I went down alone, I noticed the smell before anything else. Not rot, not mold, burnt butter. If you've ever worked a line, you know that smell instantly. That nutty, dark, almost sweet edge right before beurre noisette turns into something bitter and unusable. I remember standing halfway down the stairs thinking, weird, somebody's cooking down here, but no one was. The basement was empty. I found the case of Pinot Noir Ben needed, hauled it upstairs, and forgot about it until the next week, when I went down again and smelled the same thing, burnt butter, then again, and again. After about a month, I asked Luis, "Why does it always smell like someone's been cooking in the basement?" He looked at me for a second too long. Then he said, "You smell it too?" I laughed, but he didn't. "What is it?" Louis shrugged. "They say Ray used to make brown butter for everything. Sauces, fish, potatoes, dessert specials. Guy was obsessed." "Okay," I said. And they found him downstairs." I stared at him. He lowered his voice, though no customers were nearby. This was years before me, before Aaron, before Diane owned the place by herself. Ray was the chef when Marrow House first opened. Real old school guy, screamer, perfectionist, the kind of chef who'd throw a pan if your station was dirty. That narrows it down to every chef I've ever met. Louis smiled faintly. "Yeah, but this one got weird near the end. Staff said he started staying after close by himself, said somebody was stealing from him. Recipes, equipment, money, depending who you ask. He told people things were being moved, said he heard someone walking downstairs after everyone left. So he was paranoid. Maybe." Louis scraped a tray into the trash. "Then one morning, the prep cook came in and found him in the basement." "How'd he die?" Louis hesitated. "Heart attack, I guessed." He shook his head. "That's what they told the papers." The way he said it made my stomach tighten. What actually happened? Louis just looked past me toward the basement door. "You'll hear a bunch of versions," he said. "Best one is he fell. Worst one is..." He trailed off. "What?" Louis lowered his voice more. "They say his mouth was full of dish towel, like somebody stuffed it in there to keep him quiet." I felt a cold little crawl move across my shoulders. That's not funny. I'm not joking. Before I could ask anything else, Aaron shouted for him, and the conversation ended there. I should say now that I didn't believe in ghosts. I believed in bad wiring, old buildings settling, exhausted people seeing things out of the corners of their eyes, and restaurant workers telling stories, because the alternative was admitting we spent 12 hours a day in a pressure cooker for mediocre benefits. That was my mindset, right up until the plates started coming back. At first it was small stuff. A customer would say the sauce tasted different. A regular would ask why we'd changed the mashed potatoes. One woman sent back trout because it had a burnt aftertaste. Aaron was furious because, according to him, nothing had changed. Then one night, a man in a navy blazer called me over halfway through dinner and said, "I don't mean this as a complaint, but who cooked this?" I thought he hated it. Instead, he pointed to the duck and said, "This is incredible. Better than the last 3 times I've been here." I smiled. "I'll tell the chef." He nodded slowly. "Tastes like it did years ago." That line stuck with me. Later, when I dropped the ticket in the kitchen, Aaron didn't even smile. He just looked annoyed. "Table 20 says the duck tastes like it used to," I said. Luis and Tasha exchanged a look. Aaron slammed a saute pan onto the stove harder than necessary. "What station?" "Sorry? What station cooked that duck?" I don't know." He swore under his breath and walked off. After that, the kitchen started getting strange in ways I couldn't explain away. Sauces would reduce too quickly, or not at all. A burner Aaron knew he'd turned off would be blazing 10 minutes later. Knives would go missing, then show up clean and lined up perfectly on a prep towel. Orders would appear in the window plated more elegantly than anyone on staff had time for. That was the thing that really got to me. A busy Saturday night, tickets hanging down to the floor, everybody weeded, Aaron screaming for hands, and suddenly there'd be a plate in the past that looked better. Not different exactly, just refined, precise, like someone with calmer hands had touched it. Once it was halibut, once it was lamb, once it was a bread pudding with a sugar garnish so delicate, Tasha literally whispered, "Nope." Aaron always acted like there had to be a rational explanation, but he stopped yelling when those plates appeared. He would just go very still, stare at them, and then tell us to run them. One night, close to midnight, I caught him alone in the dry storage alcove by the basement door. He was standing there listening. "You okay?" I asked. He jerked so hard I almost apologized. "Yeah," he said too quickly. "You look like you heard something." He rubbed a hand over his face. "You ever hear anybody cooking after close?" I laughed because I thought he was messing with me. He wasn't. "Like pans?" I asked. "Like pans, like a whisk in stainless steel, like someone opening the lowboy fridge." He swallowed. "And then when I go in, nothing." I didn't know what to say. Aaron stared at the basement door. "You ever smell butter burning?" That was the first time I genuinely felt afraid in that building. Things escalated in August. It was brutally hot outside, the kind of Gulf heat that makes the air feel chewed already. The AC in the dining room kept struggling. Tempers were short. Diane was on edge because a food critic from New Orleans was rumored to be coming in under a fake reservation. That Friday, everything went wrong. A dishwasher no-showed. The oysters came in late. A server dropped a tray of martinis on table 7. Then the power flickered around 8:30, just enough to reset part of the line and crash the POS for 30 seconds. When the lights came back fully, the whole kitchen felt off. I know how that sounds, but every restaurant has an energy, a hum. This felt like walking into a conversation after someone says your name. Aaron called for a full push. Tickets were backed up. Diane was gliding between tables with that dangerous smile owners wear when they're dying inside. Around 9:15, Ben came to me pale as paper and said, "Table 16 wants to compliment the chef personally." "Okay?" "It's the Beaumont reservation." That was the critic. We all knew it. Aaron heard and swore. "No, absolutely not." Ben lowered his voice. "They are insisting." Diane appeared out of nowhere. "Then smile and accommodate them. Aaron, wipe your face." Aaron looked furious, but he took off his apron, dragged a hand through his hair, and went out to the dining room. He came back less than a minute later. not angry, shaken. What happened? Diane asked. Aaron ignored her, walked straight to Luis and said, "Who plated the cod?" Luis blinked. "I did." "No, you started it." "Who finished it?" Luis stared at him. "Nobody." Aaron looked around the kitchen like he was searching for someone standing just behind us. He said it was exactly right. He said it was the best cod he'd had in 15 years. Nobody spoke. Then Tasha very quietly said, "What did he call you?" Aaron turned toward her. She repeated, "Out there. What did he call you?" Aaron didn't answer. He didn't need to, because we all knew. Chef, not Aaron, not your chef, just chef, the way you'd speak to someone you recognized. Service ended after 11:30. The critic left happy. Diane should have been thrilled. Instead, she drank 2 fingers of bourbon standing at the bar and watched the kitchen like it was a crime scene. I was rolling silverware when I heard shouting in back, not the usual yelling, real shouting. I went through the service station and saw Diane and Aaron by the basement door. Luis and Ben were already there. Tasha came around the bar wiping her hands on a towel. Diane was saying, "You are not going down there again." Aaron snapped, "Then you go. Don't be ridiculous." "Ridiculous?" He laughed once, harsh and humorless. "He's in my kitchen." Everybody went still. Diane saw us watching and tightened immediately. "Floor meeting, now, since we're all apparently children." Nobody moved. Then she said, "Fine. You want the truth? Here." She looked at the basement door like it personally offended her. "Ray Bell was my business partner," she said. "He was the founding chef of Marrow House. He was also unstable, controlling, and impossible to manage. He thought everyone was against him. He accused staff of sabotage. He hid inventory to test loyalty. He started sleeping here some nights." Luis muttered, "Jesus." Diane ignored him. "The night he died, he refused to leave after close. There was an argument." "With who?" Ben asked. "With me." The room felt suddenly airless. Diane folded her arms. "We were hemorrhaging money. He wanted to cut half the menu and shut down for a week. I told him no. He'd been drinking. He said if I ruined his restaurant, he'd make sure I never kept it." "His restaurant?" Aaron said. Her face hardened. "Our restaurant." Nobody interrupted. He went downstairs. I left. The next morning, he was dead. The coroner ruled it a heart attack after a fall. There were no signs of forced entry. No police theory worth pursuing. End of story. "But the towel," Luis said. Diane's eyes cut to him. "Kitchen staff gossip." Was it? For the first time, something ugly flickered across her face. "If any of you want to keep working here, you will stop feeding this nonsense." Then from below us came the sound of metal striking metal, a pan hitting the floor, clear, sharp, impossible to mistake. Every person in that hallway froze. Another sound followed, a drawer sliding open, then the soft, unmistakable scrape of a knife being pulled across a honing steel. Tasha whispered, "Nope." Aaron reached for the basement handle. Diane grabbed his arm. "Don't!" He shook her off and yanked the door open. The smell hit us all at once. Burnt butter, so strong it made my eyes water. Aaron switched on the stair light and started down. I don't know why we followed him. Maybe because nobody wanted to be left alone upstairs. The basement looked wrong immediately. The old stainless prep table in the center of the room was wet, as if somebody had just wiped it down. One of the shelves stood open. A saucepan sat on a portable burner that had not been there earlier that night. Inside it, butter was foaming brown. No one touched it. No one spoke. Then Aaron took one more step and stopped dead. "What?" Ben said. Aaron pointed. At the far end of the basement was the old walk-in cooler. The door, which was always hard to shut completely, now stood wide open. and hanging from the handle was a clean white chef's towel, twisted tight like it had been wrung out by both hands. Luis whispered, "Let's go." But Aaron moved first. He walked to the walk-in and pulled the door wider. Inside, hanging from the metal racks with butcher's twine, were printed tickets, dozens of them. Old order tickets, yellowed with age, some stuck together with moisture, some fluttering in the cold draft. Every single one of them had the same thing handwritten across the bottom in thick black marker. "Send her down." Ben actually made a sound, a little trapped animal noise in his throat. Diane behind us said, "No," not scared, not confused, recognizing it. "No," she said again, and backed up. Aaron turned slowly. "What did you do?" She shook her head. "I didn't." Then the basement door slammed shut above us. The light on the stairs went out. People started screaming. I wish I could tell you I stayed calm. I didn't. Nobody did. We were suddenly in almost total darkness except for the cold white glow from inside the walk-in and the tiny blue flame under the saucepan of butter. Tasha was crying. Ben was pounding up the stairs at the closed door. Luis kept saying, "Open it, open it, open it." And through all of it, from somewhere in the basement but not any place I could point to, came the sound of footsteps, slow, deliberate, leather soles on concrete. Aaron shouted, "Who's there?" A voice answered from the dark behind us. Not loud, not a movie monster growl, just a man's voice, hoarse and tired, like he'd been working for hours. That plate was over. Every hair on my body stood up. Aaron turned so fast he nearly slipped. "Who said that?" Silence. Then, "Cod dries if you leave it." The voice came from a different corner this time. Tasha started praying under her breath. Diane, somehow still trying to control the room, said, "This is not happening." And the voice said, right beside her ear though no one was there, "Yes, it is, Diane." She screamed, not a composed gasp, a full, tearing scream. Then everything happened at once. The portable burner flared, the saucepan tipped, brown butter splashed across the floor. The walk-in door slammed shut by itself with a boom that shook the shelves. Tickets went flying in the cold air. Ben threw himself against the basement door, and this time it burst open. We ran, actually ran. No dignity, no logic, just blind panic up the stairs and into the kitchen. I remember hitting the tile on my hands, hearing glasses break somewhere in the bar, hearing Tasha sobbing, hearing Aaron shout for everyone to get out of the building. We spilled into the parking lot behind the restaurant, all of us shaking, sweat-drenched, staring back at the lit windows of Marrow House. From outside, it looked perfectly normal, warm, elegant, quiet. Then, through the kitchen window, we all saw it. A figure, tall, broad-shouldered, in a white chef's coat, standing at the pass, motionless, watching us. Luis said, "Oh my God." The figure lifted one arm slowly and pointed, not at us, at Diane. Nobody moved. Diane backed away so fast she almost fell off the curb. No, I'm done. I'm done with this." She fumbled her keys, got into her car, and peeled out of the lot so hard gravel kicked up behind her tires. We didn't go back inside that night. Ben called the police, then changed his mind and said maybe fire department, then just stood there breathing into his hands. Aaron chain-smoked cigarettes he'd bummed from Luis, though I'd never seen him smoke before. Tasha wouldn't stop crying. I kept staring at the kitchen window, but the figure never appeared again. By the time the police came, the basement was normal. No burner, no saucepan, no tickets in the walk-in, nothing. Just shelves, concrete, old boxes, and a faint lingering smell of burnt butter. The officers were polite in the way cops are when they think a bunch of restaurant workers are drunk, overtired, or both. No sign of entry, no evidence of vandalism, no suspect, no crime. Diane didn't come in the next day. or the day after. On the third day, Ben told us she'd had a family emergency. A week later, Marrow House closed temporarily for renovations. It never reopened. That would already be enough for a story. It would have been enough for me. I quit restaurants for almost a year after that. Couldn't hear a ticket printer without my chest tightening. But that isn't the part that stays with me. The part that stays with me happened later. About 6 months after Marrow House shut down, I got a message on Facebook from someone I didn't know. An older woman named Elaine Bell. The last name hit me immediately. She asked if I had worked at Marrow House and whether I'd be willing to speak to her about Raymond Bell. I almost ignored it. Instead, against my better judgment, I replied. We met at a coffee shop in Metairie in the middle of the afternoon. Broad daylight, people everywhere. Elaine was Ray's sister. She was in her 60s, well-dressed, steady hands, the kind of woman who'd spent years forcing herself to stay practical because the alternative cost too much. She didn't waste time. I heard the restaurant close suddenly, she said. I thought maybe you saw something. I told her carefully that strange things had happened. I didn't mention the full basement incident at first because saying it out loud made it sound insane. She listened without interrupting. Then she reached into her purse and slid an envelope across the table. Inside were photocopies of newspaper clippings, a death notice, and one police report. Not the full report, just a summary page. Cause of death: cardiac event associated with blunt force trauma. Location found: basement storage. Contributing factors: intoxication. There was a handwritten note in the margin, copied from the original. Possible asphyxiation. Cloth obstruction present at scene. I looked up. Elaine said, "My brother did drink. He did get angry. He also had severe asthma." I felt my stomach drop. She tapped the paper. If a towel was forced into his mouth and he couldn't clear his airway, panic alone could have triggered an attack. A fall could have finished it. Why wasn't that investigated? Her expression didn't change. It was, she said, briefly. Then what happened? She held my gaze. Diane married the lead detective 2 years later. I actually thought I'd misheard her. What? Elaine nodded once. Short marriage, quiet divorce, old news now. The noise of the coffee shop seemed to go thin and far away. She got away with it, I said. Elaine looked down into her untouched coffee. That depends on what you believe. I told her everything after that. The butter, the voice, the tickets, the figure in the window. For the first time, she seemed genuinely shaken. When I finished, she asked me one question. Did he hurt anyone? What? Whatever you saw, whatever was there. Her voice was careful. Did he hurt anyone? I thought of the slamming door, the voice, the pointing hand in the window. No, I said. He scared us, but no. Elaine nodded slowly, as if confirming something to herself. Before we left, she said, Ray wasn't a gentleman, but he loved that kitchen. If he stayed for a reason. I didn't sleep much after that. A month later, I drove past Marrow House on the way back from seeing a friend. I don't know why I took that road. Maybe curiosity, maybe stupidity. The building was dark, the sign was gone. Weeds had grown up through the parking lot cracks. It looked abandoned in that sad, ordinary way closed restaurants do. I should have kept driving. Instead, I pulled over. I sat there for maybe 30 seconds, engine running, looking at the house through the trees. Then, in one of the second-floor windows, an area that had never been part of the restaurant, just old unused rooms, I saw a light turn on, warm yellow, then another. A shape moved past the curtains. I told myself it was squatters, electric issue, anything. I got out of the car. Even now, I don't fully understand why. Maybe I wanted proof. Maybe I wanted to be brave exactly once in my life. The front door was chained. but the side gate to the service yard hung open. I went through, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. The back door to the kitchen was unlocked. Inside, the air smelled dead and stale. No music, no refrigeration hum, no voices. But deeper in the building, faint and unmistakable, I heard someone working, a knife on a board, a pan set down, cabinet doors opening and closing. "Hello?" I called. No answer. I stepped into the kitchen. Moonlight from the high windows painted everything silver blue. The dead line, the dark ovens, the empty pass. And there, on the stainless counter in the center of the room, was a plate. Fresh, hot enough that steam still lifted from it. Cod in brown butter, perfectly cooked. Beside the plate was a folded white towel and a note written on the back of an old order ticket. Just 3 words. "She's still here." I didn't wait. I ran out so fast I nearly tore the back door off its hinges. I got in my car and drove without looking in the mirror until I hit the highway. The next morning I called Elaine. No answer. I called again that afternoon. Still nothing. 2 days later I searched her name online. That's when I found the obituary. Elaine Bell had died 3 weeks before I met her. Car accident outside Baton Rouge. Instantly, according to the article. I stared at the date for a long time, thinking I had to be mistaken. Same name, same age, same photo. The same woman I had coffee with. The same woman who handed me the police summary. I still have the copy she gave me. I checked them again after reading the obituary, hoping for something that made sense, some detail, some explanation. That's when I noticed what I had missed before. The margin note about possible asphyxiation wasn't the only handwritten addition on the page. At the very bottom, in different ink, nearly hidden by the copier cutoff, was one sentence. He wasn't alone when they found him. No second body was ever listed in the papers. No second victim was named in the report Elaine gave me. I spent weeks trying to track down anything else. Archives, forums, old articles, public records. Nothing. Until I found a scanned piece from a local paper dated 3 days after Ray's death. A tiny article buried below the fold. It said Marrow House had remained closed for unexpected cleaning and repair after an unrelated incident involving a female employee. No name, no details, just one line. Sources close to the business say the woman has not been located. I don't know who she was. A waitress, a prep cook, an accountant, someone passing through. Maybe the person Ray thought was downstairs with him. Maybe the reason he stayed. Maybe the witness nobody wanted found. What I do know is this. If Ray's ghost was haunting Marrow House, it wasn't because he wanted revenge on everybody. It was because he was still working, still waiting, still trying to send someone down. And sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night with the smell of burnt butter in my apartment and hear a man's tired voice beside my bed saying, like he's correcting a ticket in the dark, "That plate was over." I haven't worked in a restaurant since, but last week a package showed up at my door with no return address. Inside was a single chef's towel, clean, white, twisted tight, and wrapped inside it was a fresh order ticket from Marrow House. 1 item, table for 2. Underneath, in black marker, "Come back, she's waiting."